All right, we're working on a 2011 Chevy Cruze, and my cousin brought this down from about 4 hours away. So the air conditioner was not working, and they got a quote to replace the evaporator core, which is over $2,000, which starts getting close to exceeding the value of the car. It wasn't the evaporator core. It was something very silly. I'm going to show you how we diagnosed it and came to the conclusion that it wasn't the evaporator core and everything we used, and show you how to check yours if you find this silly little thing, because this is an awful easy thing. So let's jump right into it. Here we go. All right, sorry about the beep, but I'm not going to shut the door because I'm going to make this part real quick. But what we noticed immediately was it wasn't displaying 63 degrees up here. It was displaying -40, which it was 75 degrees yesterday when we diagnosed this. So this is definitely not -40. That was the big thing. So in the owner's manual, it explicitly says no matter whether you have the air conditioner set to on or not, if it is 32 or below, the air conditioner will not come on. So obviously the car thought it was -40, so the air conditioner was not coming on. So where is it getting that -40 temperature from? This car, this model, it's right here. There's a little temperature sensor. This is your outside air temperature sensor. I've seen some of them too that are over here. Anywhere typically is going to be on the front of the vehicle. Usually a sensor is going to be in the airstream because it needs to actually have airflow through it. So I did find when I pulled the sensor too that it was just packed with bugs. So this being on the very front of the car, I feel like this is a fairly common problem. So don't let someone take advantage of you and say that your air conditioner is not working. If you're seeing -40 in there, this is the first thing you need to check. Now if you come underneath, there's this little access panel, and you could take it off, but I didn't even take it off. You can actually see the sensor right there. Let's see if I can get the camera in there. So that wire right there, that's the sensor, and you can pop that sensor out pretty easily. What I did to get it out was reach my hand up behind it, and then I took you can see there's 3 little prongs here, and I took a flat blade screwdriver while I was reaching underneath and kind of holding the sensor outward. I took a flat blade and kind of pried these really carefully, because this is all brittle plastic, but pried these little tabs inward towards the center, and then pulled on the sensor, and the sensor came out, and then obviously disconnected it and took it out and cleaned it up, put it back in. But we did find this sensor was unplugged. So I literally looked up through this little hole right here. And so I got my flashlight over here and right at that sensor, and I was like, oh my gosh, the sensor's unplugged. So we plugged it back in, and it still said -40. So after we took it for a drive, it was after a few minutes on the drive, actually. We had to get up to like 45 miles an hour before it kicked on. So that was kind of odd too, that it didn't kick on immediately. So what I first started with though was I was trying to see if the compressor was actually getting power. And this compressor, I'll take you back up to the top. This compressor is a little bit of an odd design. I'll take you to the top and show you why it's kind of odd, but I'll show you the bottom side of why it's odd too. But typically on a compressor, you're going to see one electrical connector. And that's going to be because it's either a clutch style or one with what they call a refrigerant control valve. At least they call that on German cars. I don't know 100% on this one what GM calls it, but this one is a hybrid of both designs, which is bizarre to me. I've never seen that, but you learn something new every day. So this one here, if you look from the top side, this connector, I disconnected it, but it has 2 more wires that run up towards the front, and that's going to control the magnetic clutch on the front of this air conditioning compressor. And when we had the air conditioner on and the car on and running, the air conditioner select on, I was not getting 12 volts DC from this connector. So I knew it wasn't getting power. So I knew something was causing it not to get power, right? So then you have this right here, which is your refrigerant control valve. And these are really popular to fail on German cars, on Toyota, and Lexus has them too. Usually they're going to be on a Sandin brand compressor on those cars. I don't even know what brand this is, but I digress. What happens typically on this is you will notice your Freon, or your car will eventually get cold, right? And in that case, the charge of Freon is perfect, but it takes a long time for it to get cold. It doesn't immediately get cold. This car right now, after we got it working, it gets cold the moment you start the car. It starts getting cold, which that's ideal. If you have a situation though that eventually your car gets cold, it might be 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes of driving, and then all of a sudden it freezes you. This is your most likely culprit, and you can usually order these even on Amazon and replace them. Unfortunately, you do have to evacuate all of the refrigerant in order to change them though, but they are cheap. They're usually $20 to $30. So the reason I say this clutch or this air conditioner design is odd is because it has both, and you can see the magnetic clutch on this one. If it didn't have the magnetic clutch portion, you wouldn't have this portion of the head of it to where the outside ring there spins and then the inside ring kind of freewheels until it energizes power to it. So you can kind of see the wires coming from that connector that I disconnected down there and heading towards the front, and that's indicative of a magnetic clutch style. So that was the first thing I kind of came to check to make sure that we were getting power. We weren't getting power there. So then we came into the fuse box, and then there was a couple relays, relay 9 and 13. Let's see, where are those? That's not a micro relay. 9 and 13 cooling fan. The cooling fan was kind of coming on, but it wasn't coming on immediately, so I wanted to check those. We pulled these two and then probed for power. So this is going to be the main circuit with high amperage, and then this is going to be the control circuit, the smaller pins. So I tested the relays too, so you could test for continuity on the control circuit. It should always have continuity here. This should have continuity only when you apply 12 volts to this. So we jumpered 12 volts off of the battery to this while we were putting the meter here and watched this essentially turn the switch on and off. And then I probed a negative off the negative terminal of the battery, and then a positive here with my meter on voltage setting in DC, and that's an auto ranging, so you would want it in that 12 volt range. But I probed that down inside of there and was getting 12 volts on both of these relays, so we knew that the fan should be getting power. The other thing we checked was there is a fuse up here, and I think it is, yeah, it's this one here, fuse 10, or it's 10 amps, it's fuse 62. That is the air conditioning fuse, AC clutch. So that was the other one. Since I wasn't getting power down there, I wanted to make sure that this fuse was not popped. So, and it wasn't. So that's when we kind of opened the manual, and he mentioned that we were also getting a dash indication that said watch for ice on the roads. So at that point, the car really thinks that it is below freezing, whether it's not. And so if the car thinks that, then it's not going to come on. These newer cars, you know, my truck is an older car. It doesn't have the control circuits that these have. This car has what's known as a CAN bus. And the CAN bus allows all the different modules to share information. Some of the information isn't going to be perfect. For instance, we had a scan tool hooked up, and we were looking at the temperature of the scan tool for this, and it was still, even with the air conditioner running, I was checking that live data on that while we were driving around, and the dash was showing 72 after we drove for a little while, but the indication I was getting on my scan tool was still 32 degrees, which is, that's weird, but it's reading the engine control module. The scan tool I was using isn't capable of reading the body control module, which is probably where this sensor down here is sending the signal. So sometimes the information, you can't totally trust it. You kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. But we saw on the dash that the temperature came up from -40 to 75 degrees, right? Like 125 degree difference, a lot. So, but there's just something to look out for on these newer cars with CAN bus. All that data shares, and it's got programming in there, you know, if statements. If you're familiar with programming language, it's going if the temperature is within this range, continue, and it goes to the next step. If this condition exists, right? If you've selected the air conditioner on, well, then power is going to go, right? So if all those conditions match, then you're going to get power, or then this circuit's going to run. So look out for that. I just wanted to share this because I did see another video, but it wasn't quite as detailed. It didn't show some of these other things to check. So those are important things to check as well. Obviously, you want to check your Freon charge, which oddly enough, even though we were told that the evaporator was leaking, the Freon charge was completely fine. We did find a leaking Schrader valve down here on the low pressure port, so we did change that, and I'll have to show you that. The other thing I did to rule out the evap 100%, and I don't know why this shop didn't do this, so the first thing I would do for an evap leak is use a digital sniffer, a gas sniffer. So I'll show you that here real quick. All right, so I've got a couple tools here that we used. First off, this is a Freon leak detector or a gas leak detector. It'll detect different gases as well, and you can turn it on, and then you can turn up the sensitivity. So when it sees a leak, it's going to start beeping faster, and you can change that gain on that sensitivity to detect the leak. So what we did after we got it running was take this puppy in here and sniff with the air blowing on different speeds, and it never changed. Now, if you get this thing close to a gas leak, it's going to go beep, 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 really, really, really fast. So if you suspect a evaporator leak, these things, I'll put a link down in the description. It'll be an affiliate link too. So we do earn a small commission on that, but no cost to you. So we appreciate you clicking on those. But I think these things, I don't remember what I spent on it. It wasn't much. It was a lot less than spending a whole weekend changing an evaporator core, I can tell you that. So, and then not fixing the problem, that would have really stunk. So I'll put a link to one of those in the description. I love this thing for finding stuff like that. So the other thing that, man, this tool has come in so invaluable now. I've changed a couple cores with this. So the valve core is what's known as a Schrader valve, and unfortunately on this one, the high pressure does not use a Schrader valve. It uses just a ball valve, and you would have to replace the whole line. But the low side, or yeah, the low pressure side does use a Schrader valve. So when you hook up your AC gauges, what's happening is you're pushing this little tab, and it's releasing this little poppet right here, and what happens is there's a little seal down here, and it wears out, and eventually it starts to bubble, and you can spray some soapy water down inside of your port, and if it's bubbling, you want to change this little Schrader valve. So what this thing allows you to do, up until last year, whenever I bought this thing, I had no idea these things existed. So what this allows you to do is, unfortunately, up until I found out about it, you would have to, in order to change this, you would have to evacuate all the Freon. So you could go to a shop and have them evacuate it. It's going to cost you $100, $200 or more to evacuate it. This thing was, I don't remember, like $20 for both. It came with the low pressure and the high pressure. But what happens is you hook this up, right, to the car, to the low pressure port, just like the AC gauges, right? You can pull this little thing back, pop it on, and then you take this little piece here, runs in and out, right? And so that's your core tool. So this will take the core that's already in the car, right? I'm going to try and do this without dropping it, but it'll take the core that's in the car, and you can go and loosen that core that's in the car with this all on, right? And it's got pressure behind it and everything. So once it loosens, well, then you can take this and pull it up, and it's going to pull it up past this ball valve, right? And then we can take this ball valve and we can close this ball valve, and now you have the system closed off. And now what you can do is take your Schrader valve out, and you can change your Schrader valve. When I found out about this thing, I had to have it because I do some AC work, and I don't like taking my cars to shops. So you put your new Schrader valve in, open your ball valve, and then you slide your new Schrader valve through and down and tighten it up. And then if you've got it right, what I like to do, so I don't have like a bunch of Freon shooting out at me, then you're gonna pull this back up, obviously. And then what I like to do is just take this and just crack it open slowly. And you should say have some pressure release, but it shouldn't sit there and just spit a bunch out. If it does, you may have to kind of push this back down and make sure that Schrader valve did get tightened down. So just another really good tip. These Schrader valves leak on every car. It's a very common leak point. Really, your most common leak points for you to have leaks are going to be your air conditioning compressor, which is a whole big issue to change. The refrigerant control valve on this one, I don't know how prone they are on this one, but every car that's had them, I explained how those fail and how to detect that. Those are a very common item. Again, that one you're going to have to discharge the system. Same with the AC compressor, but this low pressure port, you can change that Schrader valve inside of there without having to. Now, unfortunately, the high pressure port does have a ball valve and you can't, but those are really, your service ports are some of the most common. Now, you can just get new caps with new seals as well, and that will help in a lot of cases to keep that sealed off. And you can actually buy brass ones with seals, and that will keep it closed off even better. So you don't have to necessarily change your core, but I do like to change cores when they're leaking. But that's really it for this one. I just wanted to show how I would go through diagnosing and ruling out that the evaporator core was only like $100 and something, but then I would have had to discharge the system, put a vacuum on the system, leak check it, pull the whole dash. That would have been a whole weekend project, and we fixed it in, I don't know, like, I think it was like 2 hours of diagnosis, 2-3 hours of diagnosis. Now, I'm sure the shop didn't spend 2 or 3 hours. I'm hoping it wasn't anything, you know, this down here wasn't anything, you know, nefarious where they were trying to play any games, you know. But yeah, look out for that. And I'll look out for that too on other newer cars. So anyway, heads up. Thanks for watching. I'll have a few other Chevy Cruze vehicle or videos coming out from this vehicle. So stay tuned. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you doing that. And thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.